Imagine this: your lungs burn, your legs shake. You're halfway up a mountain trail you insisted on hiking alone, driven by some vague need to prove yourself. The sky, once clear, now churns with bruised clouds. Thunder growls in the distance. Your water is gone, your phone has no signal. And the trail markers, painted slashes on rocks, have vanished, swallowed by fog. You collapse against a boulder, palms scraped raw. This is how it ends, you think. Not in some heroic blaze, but as a cautionary tale. Amateur hiker ignores weather warnings. Your heartbeat thrums in your ears, sinking with the wind's howl. You want to scream, to curse the sky, the trail, your own arrogance. But then, cutting through the chaos, a memory surfaces. You're not afraid of the storm. Your grandfather once told you, years ago, as you cowered under blankets during a hurricane. You're afraid of your idea of it. The paradox hits you like a physical blow. The mountain isn't your enemy, your terror is. Consider the executive who wears exhaustion like a badge of honor, the artist who romanticizes suffering as fuel for genius, the parent who mistakes self-neglect for love. We cling to the belief that struggle must hurt, that achievement requires agony. Yet the Stoics whispered a dangerous truth. What if the obstacle isn't the mountain, the storm, or the clock, but the stories we spin about them? You're still on that rock, shivering. Your mind races. If I stay here, I'll freeze. If I move, I might fall. Both options are true. Neither is bearable. But then a single step, then another, not towards safety. You don't know where that lies, but forward into the white void. Your legs move mechanically. Your breath steadies. The fear doesn't vanish, but it narrows, sharpens, becomes a tool. This is the heart of the contradiction. You cannot control the storm, but you can choose to stop begging it for mercy. History is littered with those who raged against fate. Nero fiddled while Rome burned, blaming the gods for his emptiness. Modernity is no different. We doom scroll through crises, addicted to outrage, as if anger could bend the universe to our will. But the Stoics, enslaved, exiled, dying of plague, saw further. Epictetus, born in chains, declared, freedom is the only worthy goal, all else is slavery to circumstance. Yet here's the trap. We mistake freedom for control. You check your watch broken. You curse the rain indifferent. You tally every mistake that led you here irrevocable. But what if true agency lies not in rewriting the past or commanding the future, but in dissolving the need to? The fog thins, a jagged silhouette emerges, a cliff's edge. Your stomach drops. One misstep but then you see it. A narrow path, slick with mud, winding downward. It wasn't hidden. You were just too busy fighting to look. Here is the urgent question. If your worst fears materialized, failure, humiliation, even death, would your judgment of those things be the real catastrophe? The wind dies. For a heartbeat, the world holds its breath. Then, with glacial slowness, you kneel and begin your descent. Inch by inch, the rock tears your jeans. Blood mixes with rain. You're not brave. You're not enlightened. But you're moving, and in this moment, that is the entirety of virtue. The storm passes. You survive. But as you limp into the trailhead parking lot, a deeper unease settles in. Why did your mind revolt so violently against what was simply real? Why does the mere act of judgment, this is bad, this is unfair, turn rain into a flood, a challenge into a curse? To answer that, we must descend into the labyrinth where Stoicism was forged, not in lecture halls, but in dungeons, battlefields, and the quiet despair of ordinary lives. Imagine this: of your father slumps at the kitchen table, head in his hands, a pink slip inches from his coffee. You don't understand the word layoff, but you feel the acid tang of shame in the air. Later, he'll yell at your mother for buying groceries. Later still, he'll cry in the garage, muffling sobs with engine grease. You'll learn this lesson before you can name it. Pain is the tax on existence. But what if that's a lie? The Stoics soared deeper. In a damp Athenian prison, Socrates drinks hemlock not as a martyr, but as a man who'd already freed himself from the fear of death. On the frozen Danube, Marcus Aurelius pens Meditations by firelight, not as an emperor, but as a mortal carving sanity into parchment. In exile, Seneca writes letters to Lucilius, not about his suffering but about the folly of letting exile define him. Their revelation: we do not suffer because life is cruel, we suffer because we confuse what happens with what we decide it means. A knife cuts flesh, blood flows, that is physics. But the scream, the rage, the why me, that is philosophy. Epictetus, born a slave, crippled by a master's brutality, put it plainly: men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. Your father didn't weep for the lost job. He wept for the story he told himself. Failure, provider, fraud, the Stoics call this prohairesis, the hidden pivot where external events become internal verdicts. But here's the trap: we think our judgments are truths. Consider the raven. In a second-century Roman market, a Stoic philosopher haggles over figs. A raven lands nearby, cawing. The philosopher smiles. His companion scowls. Bad omen, the companion mutters. The philosopher shrugs. The omen is the raven. The bad is your addition. Modernity trades ravens for algorithms. You refresh your inbox. A rejection email. The facts. 12 words in Times New Roman. The judgment: I'm not good enough. My career is over. They're all laughing. Each layer a choice. Each choice a self-made chain. Why we cling to pain. In a Stanford lab, subjects are given electric shocks. Most endure them stoically until offered a button to stop the pain. Press it, and the shocks cease. But when researchers secretly disable the button, subjects report agony. The shocks haven't changed. The illusion of control has. Seneca saw this in Nero's Rome. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. We'd rather writhe under a dictator, a bad job, a toxic love than face the vertigo of freedom. Why? Because ownership of pain feels like ownership of life. To release the story, I am. My suffering is to stand naked before existence. The alchemy of perception. Add 68 Senecas. Veins lie open, his life bleeding out under Nero's order. His wife weeps, his students tremble. Yet the philosopher dictates his final treatise, turning death into a lecture hall. Why weep? He asks. You've known this was in the box all along. The box, a Stoic metaphor. When you're born, the fates hand you a chest. Inside, health, sickness, triumph, betrayal. To rage against its contents is to rage against gravity, but to curate your relationship to them. That is the art.
A test you've already failed. You're in a hospital waiting room. The doctor enters, face unreadable. Your mind splits. Version A: it's cancer. I'll die. My children will forget me. Version B: it's cancer. I'll fight. I'll love them fiercely with whatever time remains. Same diagnosis. Different universe. The Stoic asks, which prison will you build? Marcus Aurelius: the mind adapts and converts to its own purposes. The obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. But how? How to transform the scream into a song? The seduction of why me? In 1915, Shackleton's ship, Endurance, is crushed by Antarctic ice. His crew faces certain death. His journal entry: we are now homeless wanderers, but we are alive and well, and we have stores and equipment for the task that lies before us. No lament. Just inventory. Contrast this with a modern CEO's TED Talk: burnout nearly destroyed me until I realized my pain was my purpose. The audience claps. The Stoics groan. Purpose? No, Your pain was meaningless until you chose to build meaning from it. 2 scenes. 1. A Berlin nightclub, 1933. A young woman hides in a storage room, scribbling letters as SA boots stomp outside. Her name is Edith Stein. Tomorrow, she'll be sent to Auschwitz. Tonight, she writes, "Do not accept anything as truth that lacks love. And do not accept anything as love that lacks truth." 2. A Silicon Valley garage, 2023. A founder smashes his laptop after his app fails. "The market doesn't get me," he rants. "I'll show them all." Both face annihilation. One transcends. The other inflates. The difference? Edith judged her judgment. The unanswered question. You're back in that kitchen, age 9. Your father's shame is a fog. What if you'd handed him Seneca's words, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials"? Would he have believed you? Or would he, like most, dismiss it as pretty lies for the already strong? Here's the secret the Stoics dare not voice too soon: acceptance is not passive. It's a war. A daily siege against the part of you that craves permission to collapse. But what happens when we refuse to fight that war? When we let the raven's call be an omen, the layoff a life sentence, the diagnosis a death warrant? The chains tighten. The fog thickens. And the mountain, the one you survived, becomes not a teacher, but a tomb. This is the cost of Stoic ignorance. And its currency is paid in the quiet hells we build for ourselves: anxiety's whisper, resentment's slow poison, the ache of a life unlived because we fear to name our pain as ours. The storm passes. You survive. But as you limp into the trailhead parking lot, a deeper unease settles in. Why did your mind revolt so violently against what was simply real? Why does the mere act of judgment, "This is bad, this is unfair," turn rain into a flood, a challenge into a curse? To answer that, we must descend into the labyrinth where Stoicism was forged, not in lecture halls, but in dungeons, battlefields, and the quiet despair of ordinary lives. Picture Nero's Rome, bloated on wine and paranoia. The emperor stamps his foot, and senators vanish. Rivers run red during festivals. Yet the philosopher Musonius Rufus, chained in a dank cell for defying tyranny, writes to his students, "What tyrant can enslave a mind that refuses to kneel?" Meanwhile, in the streets, citizens hoard gold and gossip, mistaking comfort for freedom. Sound familiar? Replace gold with cryptocurrency, gossip with viral outrage, and the equation holds: a life allergic to discomfort becomes its own prison. You felt this. Scrolling through endless reels at 2 a.m., thumb aching, eyes glazed. Each swipe a silent plea: distract me from my dread. The algorithm feeds you rage, lust, envy, emotional sugar rushes that leave you emptier. Seneca warned of such hunger: you live as if you were destined to live forever, no thought of your frailty ever enters your head. But frailty is the point. The child clutching a blanket in a thunderstorm, the CEO grinding teeth to dust over stock dips, the lover dissecting texts for hidden slights, all share the same delusion: if I fret enough, I'll control the uncontrollable.
History whispers the cost. Take the Roman Republic, rotting into empire as its citizens traded civic duty for bread and circuses. Or Tolstoy's Ivan Ilyich, gasping on his deathbed, realizing he'd spent life decorating parlors while his soul starved. The pattern repeats because humans cling to a lie: suffering is optional. Stoics counter: no, suffering is inevitable, but useless suffering, that's a choice. Consider the Japanese art of kintsugi, mending broken pottery with gold. The fracture isn't hidden, it's exalted. Now imagine applying that to your life: the layoff, the diagnosis, the betrayal, not erased, but gilded. Amor Fati, Nietzsche called it, love of fate. Marcus Aurelius put it starker: a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything thrown into it. Yet we resist, clinging to what should be. A mother mourns her son's addiction, replaying memories of his childhood laughter. He was supposed to be happy, But the Stoic asks, who promised you that? The universe, or the stories you sold yourself? Here's the rub: to love fate is not to resign. It's to revolt against the tyranny of expectation. When Cato the Younger faced with Caesar's conquest, chose to tear out his own guts rather than live under dictatorship, it wasn't defeat, it was defiance distilled. You cannot own me. Centuries later, Viktor Frankl, surviving Auschwitz, wrote, everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one attitude. But how? How to stop conflating control with courage? Start with the body, your body, right now. Feel the chair beneath you, the air in your nostrils. Notice the tension in your jaw, your shoulders. These are facts. The judgment I am so stressed is fiction. Epictetus, the enslaved philosopher, trained his students this way. When you are offended, know it is your own opinion that offends you. Practice this, and the world softens. A traffic jam becomes meditation. A critic's bar becomes data. Even grief, that howling tempest, becomes a teacher. What you loved was never truly yours. It was loaned, and loans demand repayment. Still, the mind rebels. But what if I fail? It whimpers. The Stoic smiles. You will. So what? In 1930, Marie Curie lay dying of radiation poisoning, her fingers blackened by the very elements she'd discovered. She could have cursed her passion. Instead, she kept working, dictating notes between hemorrhages, not out of martyrdom, but because she'd mastered the ultimate alchemy. Action divorced from outcome. This is the fork in the road. One path spirals into what if, a hall of mirrors reflecting your fears. The other narrow, overgrown demands. You ask, what remains if I strip this moment of my screams? A CEO stares at bankruptcy filings. A soldier loses a limb. A parent buries a child. The raw facts are neutral. The rest, the shame, the rage, the unfairness, is a story, and stories can be rewritten. But beware, this is optimism. It's something fiercer. When Seneca's exile letter arrived, his wife begged to play the victim. He refused. Exile is a change of place, he wrote, not of character. Character, that's the axis. A sailor doesn't curse the storm. She adjusts the sails. You are the sailor. The storm is eternal. So what now? The answer lies not in grand gestures, but in the infinitesimal. The breath before the angry email. The pause before the panic spiral. The choice to see the mountain not as an enemy, but as the thing that reveals your legs can still climb. The storm is eternal, yes, but so is the shipwreck of those who mistake their chains for armor. Picture a Roman senator draped in purple silk, ordering slaves to fan him as the Visigoths mass at the gates. His wealth, his titles, his meticulously curated reputation, all illusions of control. When the barbarians breach the city, he'll scream at the heavens, demanding to know why the gods betrayed him. The Stoic knows the truth. The betrayal began long before the siege. It began when he confused his role, senator, father, citizen, with his soul, when he let the world's applause drown out the whisper of his virtue. You've done this. You've clung to jobs that hollowed you, relationships that shrank you, routines that numbed you, all while whispering, this is just how it is. But how it is a spell cast by fear. In 1950s America, housewives dutifully swallowed amphetamines to maintain the facade of cheerful domesticity. Today, influencers Photoshop their lives into parodies of joy. The drug changes, the delusion doesn't. Seneca saw it in Nero's court. They lose the day in waiting for the night, and the night in fearing the dawn. The cycle feeds itself, an Ouroboros of anxiety. Consider the prisoner's dilemma not as a game theory exercise, but as a mirror. Two accomplices sit in separate cells. If both stay silent, they walk free. If both betray, they rot. But it's the uncertainty that breaks them. The guards don't need torture. They weaponize the human need to know. Modern life runs on this currency. You refresh your inbox, stalk exes, online binge news cycles. Not for truth, but to numb the terror of ambiguity, the Stoic asks, what if you stopped playing? What if you let the sentence fall where it may and focused only on what cannot be chained, your integrity? History's graveyards are littered with those who couldn't. Take the Ming Dynasty admirals, burning their fleets to please emperors who feared the open sea, or the 21st century entrepreneur selling her startup's ethics for a bump in valuation. Both trade sovereignty for safety only to find safety was a mirage. Epictetus, born in chains, framed the paradox: no man is free who is not master of himself. Yet we auction our mastery daily to algorithms, to trends, to the hollow god of potential. Here's the trap, baited with dopamine. If I achieve X, then I'll be Y, the promotion, the wedding. The six-figure side hustle, but then never comes. Alexander the Great wept at 30, his empire stretched from Greece to India, because there were no more worlds to conquer. The modern parallel, the burnout at 40 hollowed by success, muttering, is this all? The answer was there all along, etched on Marcus Aurelius scrolls. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. But mortality terrifies us into pettiness. A man diagnosed with months to live doesn't rage at death, he rages at the years wasted pleasing strangers. A woman who survives a mass shooting doesn't mourn the near loss of her life, but the lifetime of sunset she ignored while hunched over spreadsheets. We are all terminally ill. We are all hostages to chance. The Stoic doesn't flinch from this. She leans into it, sharpening her focus like a lens. If this were your last day, would you spend it resenting the storm or learning its rhythms? The rhythms are merciless but not personal. A virus doesn't target, a hurricane doesn't hate, even a murderer, argues Seneca, is a force of nature, a product of broken logic, not cosmic malice. To resent these things is to resent gravity for a broken vase, yet we do. We curse the rain for flooding our basement, never asking why we built on a floodplain. We blame the market for crashing our stocks, never questioning why we tethered our worth to digits. The Stoic revolution begins here. Stop building on sand. Stop tethering your soul to what can be taken. But how? Start by interrogating every need. The influencer needs validation. The politician needs power. You need that promotion, that apology, that guarantee of safety. Peel the layers, and you'll find a child's plea: make the world fair. But the world isn't fair. It isn't unfair. It isn't unfair. It simply is. The mountain doesn't care if you summit it. The cancer doesn't care if you're kind. The rain that ruins your picnic nourishes the parched earth. Fairness is a fairy tale. Justice, however, justice is a choice, not the world's. Yours, a choice like Sophie Scholl's. Ijo Sirsen, Munich. A 21-year-old student scatters anti-Nazi leaflets in an empty university hall. She knows the Gestapo will come. She knows she'll die. But in her final hours, jailed and beaten, she writes, such a fine sunny day, and I have to go. What does my death matter if through us thousands of people are awakened? No grand outcomes guaranteed, just virtue naked and unbartered. Compare this to the modern activist, hashtagging rage into the void, addicted to the dopamine of retweets. Both oppose tyranny, only one is free. The difference. Scholl's defiance wasn't contingent on victory, it was its own reward. The Stoic knows. External wins are lottery tickets. Internal integrity is the compass. So where does this leave you? With a single question, sharper than any sword. What would you do if you weren't afraid of losing your job, your reputation, your life? The answer isn't in a manifesto or a mantra, it's in the mundane moments, the insult unfollowed, the risk unchained, the truth spoken even as your voice shakes. The storm's aftermath is not silence, but clarity. You stand at the trailhead, mud, caked and bloodied, staring at the mountain that nearly killed you. Its slopes gleam under a newborn sun. A raven circles overhead, not an omen now, just a bird. The paradox sharpens. You didn't conquer the mountain, you surrendered to it. And in that surrender you found strength. This is the Stoic secret, etched into the bones of the world. Rivers don't rage against their banks, they carve them. Oaks don't curse hurricanes, they sink roots deeper. When Marcus Aurelius gazed at the chaos of war, he saw not an enemy, but a reflection. The universe is change, life is opinion. Your life, then, is not a ledger of events, but a mosaic of judgments. Break them, and you break the chains. Consider the blacksmith. Each strike of his hammer is not an attack on the iron, but a collaboration. Heat softens, force shapes. The metal's resistance guides the craft. So too with fate. When cancer claimed the Stoic philosopher Rutilius Rufus, he greeted it as a final teacher. No defiance, no delusions of victory. Just gratitude for the lesson. This is what it means to live according to nature, not passive acceptance, but active harmony. You felt this harmony, however faintly, in the breath after a scream, in the pause before a reply. It's there when you choose kindness over score, settling courage over posturing, presence over panic. The four virtues, courage, justice, wisdom, temperance, are not rules. They're rhythms, the heartbeat of a world that thrives not on control, but on flow. History's greatest rebels understood this. Joan of Arc, burned at the stake, didn't beg for rescue. She asked for a cross. Nelson Mandela, pacing his Robben Island cell, didn't plot vengeance. He studied his captor's language. Both grasped the truth. Tyrants fear not the sword, but the unshackled mind. Your modern tyrants' anxiety, envy, regret crumble the same way, not through force, but through focus. Focus on what? The Japanese maple in your backyard. Its leaves don't clutch autumn. Brilliance, they release it in crimson waves. The barista who smiles despite her aching feet. The friend who listens without fixing. These are not small acts, they're revolutions. As Epictetus taught, no great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. Ripening takes faith. Faith that the frost won't kill the blossoms. Faith that the market crash won't erase your worth. Faith that even in failure, you remain whole. This isn't naivety, it's the hardest realism. The tree doesn't believe in spring, it embodies spring, cycle after cycle, because that is its nature, and yours, to bend but not break, to burn but not ash. So return to the mountain, not the one of rock and ice, but the one you've built from unmet expectations and inherited fears. Climb it, not to plant a flag, but to feel your pulse sink with the wind. Each step a breath, each slip a lesson. The summit, irrelevant, the climb itself is the alchemy. In the end, when the gods come, or the diagnosis lands, or the love leaves, only one question remains. Did I live as a hostage to happenstance, or a steward of my soul? The answer won't echo in history books. It'll resonate in the quiet moments, a hand held in silence, a lie rejected, a dawn greeted not with dread, but with the primal joy of breath. The Stoics knew this. They wrote not for glory, but for the slave, the soldier, the ordinary heart. Their legacy isn't a philosophy, it's a mirror. Gaze into it, see the cracks, the fear, the unyielding light beneath, then ask, as they did, if not now, when? If not me, who? The world can take everything from you, except your virtue. What will you choose today? If this journey through the storm resonated with you, if you felt the crackle of that Stoic fire, then this is your invitation, not to follow me, but to walk this path as fellow travelers. The road is steep, the storms will return, but here we don't just survive them, we use them. So click subscribe. Not for me, but for the part of you that's tired of building prisons from what if. Ring the bell, not as an alarm, but as a rallying cry, a reminder to show up when new insights arrive. And if this flicker of ancient wisdom lit something in you, leave a like. Not for vanity, but as a signal to the algorithm gods. More of this, less of the noise. Because the mountain doesn't care if you climb, the raven doesn't care if you listen, but I do, and the conversation's just beginning.